You have reached the Geek Elite. Good luck.
Nostalgia is one of the strongest forces in the human psyche and is responsible for the continued existence of some of our favorite fandoms. From the minds behind the Dole Up in Dreams podcast and Isolation Cast Voices from Quarantine, Saturday Morning Confidential takes you on a deep dive into the properties that helped influence the artists and creators of today. So whether you are a Goonie, a Gem Girl, a Digi-Destined, or you just want to return to Oz, new episodes release on Fridays bi-weekly starting January 1st of 2021, and join us on the Wednesdays after the main show for the Serial Killer Radio Hour, where we sit down with the people responsible for the toys, shows, and fandoms that you love. Now you can find Saturday Morning Confidential at certainpov.com/SMCpod or on your favorite podcast platforms. So don't forget to tune in for another deep dive into the files of Saturday Morning Confidential.
Welcome back to another episode of VHS Gems, the podcast in which, I don't know, occasionally we torture ourselves watching movies that originally came out on VHS in that childhood dreamland and deem whether or not they're worth a watch. Usually not. I'm coming to discover.
The fact that I was questioning whether or not I was tripping on my pain medication while watching this movie should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah. I'm not on pain medication, and it was a bit hard to watch. So
Yeah, this was a lot.
This is Jessica from Geek Elite Media, and on the podcast with me is John.
That's me.
And we are here to talk about Krull, Krull, which I had only known as that random fantasy from the 80s with the weird boomerang thing.
That's a pretty apt description, I've come to find out. Not a whole lot more to this movie. I mean, there is, but there isn't.
Yeah. Have you seen this movie before?
Oh, I know I've seen it because I recognize the glaive. That's that little boomerang thingy. Mm-hmm. But this definitely is one of those that just, I honestly feel like I repressed. Like, there was just so much about this movie that I didn't remember. I mean, bits and pieces, like, stood out. Like, for a kid, they would. Like, giant spiders and, like, crazy special effects for no real reason. But no, I did not remember what the plot of this thing was. I didn't remember that the musical score was all over the place on this one.
Oh my gosh. That was my biggest thing, was I was trying to figure out, would this movie actually be a good fantasy if it had a good musical score? Like, if you took the music out of it, like, it wouldn't be god-awful, but the music just didn't match it. Like, it was so it was very, like, it's like the music in a Hallmark movie where it just makes zero sense and is, like, slightly too loud.
And they were just trying to fill in all these, like, empty spaces, I think. Like, they were relying too much on the music to make you feel like whatever's happening in the environment. But I'm like, we're just looking at a countryside. This doesn't have to be so bombastic. like tone it down a little.
No. And just even the fight scene songs didn't quite match with the fighting, and just, I don't know. The music was the worst part.
This movie, I have a simple way of putting it. This movie has everything in it of things that I like, but in such overabundance that it becomes toxic. It becomes poison. Because this thing has elements from Star Wars, elements from Lord of the Rings, elements from Flash Gordon. Like, there's even like a little bit of Zardoz in here with how some of the special effects look.
It is definitely a high budget film.
Yeah, this was like close in budget, if not a little bit more, than Return of the Jedi, which came out the same year.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right. Huh, 83. Yeah.
I came to find out, I was like, wow, goes to show you what having somebody that knows what they're doing in production like really makes a big difference here. Because yeah, the Jack Horner who did the music has done great soundtracks. But this score sounded like he like fused together Tron with Star Trek. Almost literally. Like I could hear little motifs, I think they call them, that sound like they were straight out of both movies. And he, as a matter of fact, also did the score for Star Trek II, the Wrath of Khan. So I was like, okay, that makes sense, which I think came out like the year before this. This movie was just an oversaturation of what theoretically should be cool elements, but there's just so many of them in the wrong proportions. This, you know what this is? This is the Swedish chef making like lasagna. It's just like just throwing ingredients and just going you know, like not even making sense. It's just this movie was insanity.
Yeah, have you seen the new Muppet show? I think it's called Muppets Now on Disney Plus, where they have, it's like a bunch of different kind of sort of Muppets doing internet videos, I guess, or YouTube videos, and there's like where the Swedish chef challenges an actual real life chef making a traditional dish from their culture.
Wow.
And it's great. It's hilarious. And also kind of mean too, because the Swedish chef is a very sore loser and does not know how to cook a lot of different cultural things. But you do actually learn more about the cultural dish, and that's where I kind of liked it.
That's nice. See, I do like the Muppets, don't get me wrong. I just haven't really focused on any of the new Muppets that's been going on recently, except for the episode with Aubrey Plaza. Oh,
you watched that? What? Well, didn't it have a Swedish chef thing in it?
I think
maybe that one didn't.
They might have. I don't remember. Honestly, I only remember the Aubrey Plaza segment.
You and Aubrey Plaza.
I like Psychos.
Oh, she could be a really nice person.
No, everybody agrees that she's psycho.
Is she a psycho, or is she just herself?
Herself is basically psychotic, I think.
Okay.
That comes through in her characters, but from what I've seen and what I've like heard other people talking about her, she's definitely up there in like weirdness factor.
Okay, yeah.
But you know what? She's real.
Doesn't necessarily make you psychotic, is all I'm saying. Like, psychotic is like a...
See, I like to consider myself a psychotic, like, meter. I was like, if you like me, you might be psycho. So, that's already red flag number 1.
Oh my god.
But back to the movie. So, Krull, what is this about? There's prophecies,
It's about a planet, which took me a while to figure that out. It is another planet, and it's called Krull, and they get invaded from a species from another planet called I don't know.
But they look like monsters.
They look very much like bugs, I guess, in shells. It looks, I don't know, it was like a smaller bug and a bigger bug is what it looked like when they were killed and stuff. Like a smaller bug would come out. And it was kind of gross.
There were some like roach looking things as well.
Yeah. And then I don't know, the big bad guy, I can't remember his name, but I don't know. A teleporting rock castle thing.
I don't remember anyone's name in this movie. There was like
Colwyn and Lissa. That's what I remember. Colwyn and Lissa. Prince Colwyn and Princess Lissa.
Okay.
Yeah, because it starts on their wedding day. Because they're from 2 different kingdoms on Krull, and they want to combine the kingdoms. And Lissa's father is not for it. But she's like, it'll be fine. And then, of course, she meets Colwyn, and it's love at first sight. And then the aliens attack on their wedding day.
And then the aliens attack.
And then the aliens come. Which was kind of cool to see a fantasy with aliens in it, I guess. Like, it's a good science fantasy kind of mix.
Yeah, this like I said, this was just all over the place. It couldn't decide if it wanted to do medieval fantasy, sci-fi, high fantasy, sci-fi. It just did all of it.
It's called, according to Wikipedia, it is a science fantasy swashbuckler film.
Sure.
I can't remember what a swashbuckler actually is. Because I thought that was more like pirate or bandit type things, right?
It's like
Which I guess it does have.
It's like those Errol Flynn movies, like Robin Hood could be swashbuckler.
Yeah, I guess. Isn't it like when criminals save the day is more what I'm thinking, swashbuckler kind of thing? I don't know.
That could be,
I could probably go on the page and figure out what a...
I mean, pirates and thieves.
It is a subgenre of action often characterized by sword fighting and adventurous heroic characters known as swashbucklers. So sword fighting, basically. Okay.
So the Dread Pirate Roberts would be a swashbuckler.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of celebrities, this movie, for the time, had some unknown actors that later went on to do bigger things. Liam Neeson is in this movie.
He is. I saw his name. It was the only name I recognized. I don't know if you recognized anybody else's, but...
Yes, I recognized Robbie Coltrane, who also plays Hagrid in Harry Potter.
Oh, man. Okay, I feel bad for not recognizing that one.
And then there was... I didn't recognize his name, but as soon as I saw his face, I'm like, oh, it's that dude. So, one of my favorite characters from any movie ever is the teacher from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
The teacher from Charlie and
the really snooty kind of British teacher who's like, how many chocolates did you eat, Charlie? And he's like, 2. And he goes, 2? I can't do just 2, because they're trying to like teach him like percentages and stuff. And he's just like a really asshole kind of a teacher. And he was in this movie.
Wait, go back. This is your favorite character?
One of.
Okay.
He's not impressive in any way, but just his performance is like, I like this guy, you know? He's just really odd and like asshole-ish, and there's just something kind of oddly appealing about that.
Okay.
I like assholes too. Bitches and assholes.
Bitches and assholes. Oh my god. Okay.
So, this guy played Ergo in the movie.
Ergo, the magnificent guy?
I think he was the one that kept saying like he was a little person, like we little people like have to stick together. I don't know. He has like that Prince Valiant haircut. I don't know. It's kind of if you see him.
Is he the one that turns into the tiger?
I think so. Yes, the one that can do like magic stuff.
Okay. Yeah, the one that can do magic stuff. He was probably my favorite side character. I don't remember his name.
He's a good side character, and that's why I liked him in Charlie in the Chocolate Factory as well, because he's inconsequential mostly to the plot, but his inclusion just makes it like that much more interesting, because he's like that little bit of flavoring to the movie. But I mean, yeah, by no means is he like one of the greatest actors of our time or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. Other than that, though, nobody else really stands out. Like, I mean, there was, because of the Liam Neeson inclusion in this one, I forgot to say this when we restarted VHS Gems, but I was going to try to have like a continuous counter of Star Wars references in movies, whether they be an actor that's been in Star Wars or they reference Star Wars within the movie. Because almost every movie we've watched has had a Star Wars reference in it.
We've watched a lot of later 80s sci-fi. So yeah.
So it's almost hard to avoid it, but at the same time, it's like that wasn't a very common thing either. Like, it's common now because like,
Yeah.
it's just we've grown up with it. But at the time, having a Star Wars reference in a movie that was kind of contemporary wasn't that often. Like it was very few and far between. But almost everyone that we have watched has had some kind of a reference here or there. I mean, Indian in the Cupboard had Darth Vader.
Yeah.
The Science Project had the dudes dressed up like stormtroopers. Even in the Explorers, we didn't touch on it. We completely skipped it. But there's a part where one of the characters, I think it was Ben, he's holding a flashlight and he starts doing lightsaber like whooshing motions.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a few things like that. And then here we have an actual in the Mouth of Madness. We had an actual Star Wars actor with Hayden Christensen, and here we have Liam Neeson, both from the prequels, as a matter of fact. So that's kind of an interesting coinky dink there. So from this point forward, anytime we run into a Star Wars reference of some sort in the movies, I'm going to be calling them out.
But can we Star Wars it? Okay, got it.
Yes, does this Star Wars?
Does this Star Wars? Oh, okay. I gotta be honest, because somebody mentioned on our Week's Watch podcast this week that they were playing Super Smash Bros. I have rediscovered my love for Super Smash Bros. And I was playing that while I was watching this movie, because this movie did not hold my attention at all.
I was playing Scott Pilgrim.
Okay, cool. I think you sent us pictures of that, and I was like, is that Scott Pilgrim?
It is.
I forgot it had a game.
It's amazing. It's such a fun game. But yeah, same. As a matter of fact, I think I probably saw you on there saying you're playing Smash, and I was like, oh, cool. But I'm playing Scott Pilgrim. Don't blame you 1 second, because this was a bad sign that the movie begins with this ridiculous fanfare. And what I'm assuming is supposed to ape the Star Wars opening crawl, except there's no information whatsoever. It's just literally the sight of a mountain that's floating through space. And
I thought it was an asteroid going to destroy a planet. I was very confused. And
right,
it's like, nope, it's a ship that looks like a rock.
You would be forgiven because, yes, it just looks like a big chunk of rock. And later we find out that it's called, like, the Black Fortress, I think, or the Black Castle. And it flies. It can move positions and disappear, apparently. And this is one of the most OP villains. Apparently, he can create reality just by thinking it. And, like, I think all of his, like, soldiers were basically from his own imagination or something. I was very confused by a lot of this.
I thought it was kind of like a hive mind type thing, actually. Only instead of a queen, it was a king in charge of everything.
Maybe. I don't know. And then, like, when this thing arrives, doesn't it basically wipe out the entire kingdom except for the prince?
Yeah. It does. Well, it seems to. I mean, other than the peasants that don't get invited to the wedding, but
So basically, everyone at the castle, the princess gets kidnapped. I guess the bad guy wants to take her on as his consort.
I'm gonna go on a huge tirade about Princess Alyssa, by the way. just a warning on that one. But yeah, they all get attacked at the castle and they all die, and the aliens are shooting lasers at them, but they're just fighting with swords.
Yeah.
And
real quick, the horses can go so fast that they set fire to the ground.
They're fire horses. They explain that. They were a special breed. I just love, actually, that scene I loved, because the horse they chose to be the fire horse is a Clydesdale, which is not a fast horse. No, it's a powerful horse.
Those are like the pretty horses that Budweiser uses for their parade.
Yes, they are. Clydesdales are gorgeous horses, but they do not run that fast. And I just thought it was an interesting choice of horse to choose to be the fastest horse on their planet. Fire mare or fire something horse.
Yeah, it's because they just look cool.
Yeah.
It's basically... Flame Dash, or what's that Pokemon name? That horse that's on fire? Rapidash?
I can't. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, Rapidash, something like that.
Yeah.
I can't.
stupid.
I watched the show. I never got into the games, but
this movie's so stupid. There's a separate podcast that I like to listen to called How Did This Get Made? I don't know if they've ever done this movie. I want to say they have, because this is exactly the kind of thing they'd be talking about. They would just be like, who approved this budget and this, just anything that happens here?
Well, from what I understood from the production, it was literally Columbia Pictures just being like, let's do a fantasy. And the thing it's original, at least. It's not based off of anything. They straight up had a screenwriter go and write it. Yeah. They wanted to create a crazy high-budget fantasy film, and they went there, and it was like, what's the term, like too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe, or too many ideas.
I think there was too much cocaine in the nostril, to be honest. This was just, I can only imagine like they would just do like these huge rails and then just start typing furiously.
Yeah, I mean, they also had another writer come in to do a second version of the script as well, so it was just very, and I think they ended up just re-editing the first script instead, it looks like. Because Wikipedia says that there was a plot in one of them that would have had Lissa turning into the antagonist at the end.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting, but they wanted to keep the integrity of her freaking innocence, so... Yes.
I'm looking at her IMDb profile picture right now, and she looks like she could be the bad guy. Like, that's really...
She reminded me of another character from another 80s fantasy, from Legend.
Yes.
She's not a princess in that, but she made me think of that type. In fact, this whole movie really reminded me of Legend, and Legend is also not a wonderful film, but at the same time, it's so not wonderful that it's good.
It's like at least it's focused. Yeah, I know you're talking about the girl that plays Sloane in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Mia Sara, I think, is her name. And yeah, I like it because she goes from being, like an innocent and pure looking person to at the end being corrupted, and there's like a dark version of her, and that's really cool. I could see them doing that, but she already looks like she's the corrupted version at the beginning when we meet her. She just happens to be wearing this bright kind of like belle looking dress from like Beauty and the Beast, which doesn't seem to fit any of the aesthetic of the other like characters going on. Like, this just such a jumble in this thing.
It's a jumble, and her whole characterization is like, she comes across in the beginning like she could be a strong role, like because she's making that point that she's getting married to basically save the kingdom, and her dad doesn't want her to get married, but she is making the choice. It's not an arranged marriage in the sense that it's like a contract. It's an arranged marriage in the sense that she wants to politically gain for her kingdom, and this is the easiest way for her to gain it, and she's fine with gaining it this way. And
doesn't she also pose like a challenge? So there's like only the one that can hold this like fire water thing will be like a worthy companion or something? Like,
yeah, this is where I'm like, what the hell? And maybe if I paid more attention to this movie, but just, it seems she has magic of some kind. She can produce flame in her hands. Cool. Not once does she ever use it for her freaking self.
Mm-mm.
In the end, she gives it away to Colwyn so he can use her own magic to defeat the bad guy. And I was like, why not just have her freaking kill the thing? Or just, I don't know, light a pathway in the weird, I don't know. It was just,
her running around the bad guy's palace looked a lot like Flash Gordon when that female character, whatever her name was, I don't even remember now, was like trying to escape, and there's just like these corridors and these large halls, and
she's doing random flips and
she's just like doing like aerobics in there.
That female role was a better representation of women than Princess Lissa, which is saying something because that was from Flash freaking Gordon.
Yeah, or the Widow of the Web, who I guess, had some history
Oh my
with the character
God.
that went. Okay, so here's one of my main problems I had with this movie. This movie, if this movie felt like it was longer than 2 hours. Like,
God, it felt so long.
from what I can see here, it's 2 hours and 1 minute exactly, but it felt easily twice that long. I felt like I was watching a mini series because scenes would just go on, and you have this one guy who says, "Oh, I know a woman that can help us, but she doesn't like helping people. She's usually just kill people, but she knows me." So this one guy breaks off from the main group because at this point they're basically doing a Fellowship of the Ring. Just a bunch of random people get together and start heading towards to like find the secret of where to find the Black Temple or whatever it's called. This one guy decides to go off on his own, has a little side story, goes to this giant cave full of spider webs, and there's a Madam of the Web, but he knows her real name, so that's gonna protect him and like he'll have a conversation. But there's also a giant stop motion albino spider in this thing, and all of this is like, it felt like 20 minutes of just in the cave with the spider talking to this woman who alternates between old and ugly to young and beautiful because the man still sees her as her young and pretty self, even though I think she was responsible for the death of his son. I think that's what happened.
That is legit what happens. So, and the other thing that you're forgetting is that this guy was like, because the other guy's like, she's never gonna help, she just murders people or whatever, and he's like, I'll be fine, I know her real name, it's a ancient enchanted name, and her name, John, is Lissa.
And she says, yes, my name is like the princess's name.
Yes,
what a
it's like the
coincidence.
princess's name. And all I could think of is that joke in Monty Python and the Holy Grail where they ask the enchanter what his name is, and he's like, Bob.
It was Tim the enchanter.
Tim, that's what it is, Tim.
There are those who call me Tim.
And it was supposed to be an elaborate name, but it's just the actor went, Tim.
I don't remember if he
It's
forgot
brilliant.
the line or if he just tried to be flippant and they worked like for the comedy
I
of it.
think he forgot it, I thought, and they kept it because it was a really complicated name. So he just went Tim, and it's I love that movie. I need to watch it again.
I want to
Clearly,
watch
'cause
that
I
as
thought
a
it was
palate
Bob.
cleanser because this movie was just like, I don't know, like I can't reconcile my feelings towards this movie because I'm sure we're gonna get to it eventually, but I'm just gonna like say it now before I forget because I really don't want to just put this movie past me already.
Say it.
This movie, I don't believe is a gem. I believe this movie is like one of those radium dishes that you can get around the turn of the century.
Radium dishes.
Yes, like that silverware, like those like china sets that you can get that were made with uranium and actually
It's
glow in the dark.
Slowly killing you mean?
Basically, it's pretty from afar, but you don't want to get near it. This is like a curio that you need to keep behind glass. And don't show it to anybody. Just kind of like acknowledge that it's there, admire it for what it is, but leave it the hell alone. Don't touch it. Don't go near it. That's just what this movie is. It's uranium silverware or flatware.
Yeah. I absolutely adore that metaphor, and that is perfect. I definitely agree. This is not a gem. I do want to go back to that widow, whatever, spider lady.
The widow of
Lissa.
the web.
The widow of the web. There we go. That whole part confused the crap out of me. So, but it is. Well, it's not the only other female role. You have like what 4 female roles in this movie, and it's Lissa, Madam Web, and the 2 ladies that show up at the camp one night, and I had no idea why they were there.
Yeah, and then one of them is working for the bad guy, and the bad guy kills her remotely.
Yeah, and
I got the
there's
impression they
just
were there to
so
kind of
many-
tempt the guys because they were all men, so they're like, hey, we're gonna use our feminine wiles to like dissuade you from your quest or something.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. Well, I guess, but all the women are used as plot devices, basically. Every single one. And they give Madam Web, which could have been a very interesting character and kind of cool. And I think may have possibly been to represent if Lissa did turn evil in the end, or Princess Lissa did turn evil in the end. That's who she would become, I guess, maybe. But, like, just the story that she tells where they break up but she's pregnant and she kills her own child out of anger for, I don't even know his name, for leaving her. And I was just like, what the hell did she just confess to? And then she mentions that she's like, this is her punishment. So I thought she was in control of everything, but you later on learn, no, she just turns over the sand for the spider. And then the spider kills her after she gives that guy a way out. And it was just so not thought of well and depressing.
There's a lot of like,
depressing.
what was
it's
the
not
point?
Depressing in the sense, yeah, it's like, it's what's the point? And then like, I don't know. It's the early 80s. I don't expect wonderful female roles in these movies written by men and directed by men.
Hey,
but at the same time, I am very disappointed in this movie.
There were some good female roles in Lady Hawk and Dragon Slayer, and they were much more fantasy than this was.
Yeah, that may be my biggest issue with this one is I'm like, even other fantasy films had better female representation. I love Lady Hawk. I need to rewatch Lady Hawk. But I just, and then just the reason why those girls are in the camp is for one of them to seduce Colwyn so that the evil guy can convince Lissa that he's gonna abandon her and cheat on her. And Lissa's like, oh, no, he's not. We love each other. And it's just so stupid. It's like,
yeah.
And then I don't know.
And when it doesn't work, he just outstretches his hand, and in the hologram of the woman in the camp, like, she just starts screaming in pain, I guess, 'cause she's being murdered, tortured somehow.
Yeah, something's happening. Who knows? I don't know. It's just so stupid. And then the other stupid thing happens to that poor old mage guy. The blind emerald
You don't even see him get killed. Like, you have what was it? Okay, so that whole section, because then this reminded me of a much better quicksand movie section, which was in the Never-Ending Story with Artax and Atreyu.
We don't talk about that section.
Too soon.
Of Never-Ending Story.
Story. What was it there? Yeah, so we spend way too much time in this bog of sand, quicksand. The old mage guy is just kind of chilling on a log. And then I guess like a doppelganger of some sort comes up behind him. I guess kills him, but you don't really see how. You just see that his nails are long and like grabs the back of his neck. So I'm assuming we're meant to imply that like maybe he's injecting venom into him or something. But then we just cut to, okay, so this is obviously the imposter, but nobody else knows this yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the imposter or the mage was originally supposed to show the way to Colwyn to the place where they were going to find out how to get to a lot of this is just getting to a place to find out how to get to another place. That's really annoying. But
well, the blind mage was going with them because the blind mage could see where the castle was. But the blind mage could see. But the castle kept moving, so I think Colwyn wanted him to stay because if it moved, then the blind mage would be able to see it. But because the blind mage dies, and then that one guy finds his body in the sand somehow,
no,
and
not just some guy, a cyclops.
The cyclops, all right, the cyclops.
A cyclops who joins their quest for no real reason that I can tell. He was supposed to, because that's how he was supposed to die, was by joining, because Cyclops can see their death. Oh, because they have that
apparently. Because they have one eye, the all-seeing eye, so they can see their death. And if they had this weird, well, kind of interesting concept where if he decided to try to not die, then he would suffer. But I can't figure out if he did do the death he was supposed to do or if he didn't. Because the most interesting thing I found about this movie is I really wonder if George R. R. Martin loves this movie, because this whole movie had a lot of very surprising death scenes where you're like, oh, they're dead. Oh, they're getting stabbed. Like, a lot of, and smushed.
Oh, yeah, no.
The Cyclops gets smushed.
The two dudes that get impaled, but, like, linger for a very long time during, like, the finale. They're just, like, huge spikes are going through their bodies, and they're just kind of there, like, well, this sucks.
Well, I think the spikes hadn't pierced through. I think they pierced a little bit. That one guy that fell, it pierced all the way through, which that was the other thing. That made no sense. There's a lot of magic rules in here that are not explained, because when they're in that room, one of the guys has a dagger, and when he drops the dagger, the spikes stop moving. And the guy's like, don't touch the dagger, it's not worth it. And he goes and touches the dagger again, and then the spikes continue to move and start impaling people. And you're just like, what's so special about that dagger? Yeah. Like, did I miss something? Like, why can't he touch the dagger?
This movie operates on dream logic.
So confused. I guess.
Like,
it would have been a really bad nightmare, I guess.
Yeah. This is why I was wondering if I was high on pain medication. I was like, is this really how the movie is? Or am I just in a really happy place right now and things are just not making sense?
No, it is really how the movie is. Things do not make sense. Because, like, they tell that story about the Cyclops, how he knows how he's going to die. And if he doesn't die that way, then he will suffer. And he leaves them before they get on the fire horses, and he's like, this is where I must go because I gotta die here, I guess. I don't know how he was gonna die here. And then he comes back later on to go and save them, and he ends up getting squished between, like, the door and the rock, I guess, trying to hold the door open, which was very much hold the door corridor moment for me that I didn't need to remember. But just to where I'm like, George R. R. Martin totally watched this movie, didn't he? But I bet
you George R. R. Martin salivated at Artax.
Yeah, I know. Why? Stop it. So I'm confused whether or not that was actually how he was supposed to die, or if he chose to go save them and then died in such a traumatic way because he chose to go save them. Like, I was confused. I don't know. It was a weird add-on. And then, just all these people just running straight away from people getting shot, and Colwyn controls the glaive with his mind, I guess. But then he can also take Lyssa's magic powers and use it to burn down the bad guy, who's a big giant bug that actually kind of sort of looks almost like the Predator, but not. He looks like just a bug version of the Predator. It makes zero sense. No sense.
No, this movie left a very awkward void after watching it. Because even though I was doing something else to keep myself entertained, because I definitely know the movie wasn't doing that for me. And I was like, was it worth it? Did we have to go through all that? It just was such a drag.
It was such a drag. Ugh. What else? I know there was something else that drove me nuts in this thing. I can't remember what. We already talked about the female representation not being great. This was a super high budget film, too. Yeah. And it used the same studios as 007 sound stages, so that's cool.
I mean, for a James Bond movie, like, that seems accurate, but for something like this, I mean, some of those sets did look like like pretty elaborate. Like there were some large sets in there. So that means they probably filmed at what, Pine Tree Studios?
Yep, Pinewood Studios.
Pine Tree, Pinewood, same thing. But
you recognize the name and the studios for being huge? I'd never heard of Pinewood Studios before.
Yeah,
it's just a big studio?
Yes, that's where they filmed, well, a lot of movies, obviously, but I think it burned down since. But I remember the reason I know that name is because of Batman 1989 and the Batman Returns sequel. All of those were filmed indoors. That's why the sets look so huge. It looks like, large chunks of the city, because they're basically like giant airplane hangars that they can reassign as they need for production purposes. So that makes sense now. I understand why some of those locations are just like these sprawling multi-level like looking environments.
Huh. That's cool. I didn't know that. I don't know. The special effects were not bad in this film.
The blue screen when they're riding the horses was pretty bad.
Okay, that was pretty bad, but I feel like for the time it wasn't that bad. Like, I feel like I'd seen worse in early 80s films. But the, like, costuming work and the... I don't know, I'm trying to find something good in here, John. Just waste my time.
It's definitely a good example of excess and how more can sometimes be less when you don't have a focus and you don't have a good like production designer. Because this thing was just, I don't know even who to put the blame on. I mean, like the writer was clearly just doing whatever they wanted, and the director, I'm sure, was just trying to make sense of all of that. But at some point, somewhere along the way, somebody has to be like, yo, can we dial this back a bit? It feels like nobody said no to anything. There's like, hey, how about we have a scene where this happens? Sure, let's shoot it. Oh, it looks like shit. Oh, well, we'll fix it in post. And you end up having a lot of really bad composite shots, especially towards the end when they start having a lot more laser battles and Colwyn is fighting with the big bad. I was gonna call him the boss, but that's basically what it is. This is like a really bad RPG or like video game. At some point, the boss at the end, the villain, isn't even corporeal anymore. He just looks like a giant kind of ghostly apparition. And that's it. The movie then it just kind of ends, and like so basically take Dune, Star Wars, Tron, Lord of the Rings, a little bit of Star Trek, some Legend, some Dragon Slayer, put it in a blender, and then pour some like absinthe over it. You get this weird concoction.
Oh gosh. So this movie did not do well in the box office.
Oh, big surprise
surprisingly. It made like maybe half of its original budget. So it bombed pretty hard. It did oddly get a cult following, I guess, and people like to compare it to Excalibur meets Star Wars. Youch to that comparison on both movies.
You know, there's a movie called Yor, the Hunter from the Future. Yor spelled Y-O-R. And that does a combination of like caveman, dinosaur type action with some somewhat rip-off Star Wars action. And I think that's a better movie than this one, even though it's very clearly much more low budget. Yeah.
That hurts. Okay, okay, so random question. I was gonna say, how would you make this movie? What do you think this movie needs to change the most?
Right off the bat, I can tell you the music.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. It makes zero sense. Zero sense. I would definitely change the writing for the female characters. More so, though. Because I can deal with crappy music. But crappy written, that makes no sense, written female characters.
So, like, would they be females with more agency or just not make as dumb decisions?
Definitely more agency. Like, I don't blame anybody for making dumb decisions, because how would you react to if you get kidnapped in a teleporting fortress? It was more, my issue with it was Lissa seemed at the beginning to have a lot of agency, and she lost it once she became the damsel. That's what drove me nuts. Like, I don't want the whole idea of Lissa becoming an antagonist in the end, because I hate that idea of she loses her innocence and therefore she's evil, which is just such a gross statement kind of thing, that women are only their innocence, basically.
Their virtue.
And yeah, their virtue. And that's what it is, because, I mean, she also wears white the entire film. Granted, it's her wedding dress, but even in the beginning, she's wearing white. So, I don't know. I just a little bit more fight back, a little bit of sassiness or something. Or instead, she kind of fights back and argues, but it's more over how much Colwyn will love her and save her. And also, I don't know, actually using her magic herself. Because they have, that's what it is, that scene where she saves where she gives Colwyn her magic, because the glaive, for whatever reason, is not listening to him anymore. And they both have that realization, like, it's not the glaive, it's us, our love. And and I'm just like, okay, y'all literally met the day of your wedding. Okay, and I got it. It's not love, honey. He's hot and he fights good. Just stop. It's okay, but just, it's not love.
They did try to inject some kind of commentary by making that statement early on, where she says, I hear he's a good soldier or a good warrior. And somebody actually tries telling her, it was like, well, good soldiers don't necessarily make good husbands or something like that.
Yeah, it's her dad that says that.
I was like, wow, something kind of progressive in this. That's shocking.
And that's what it is. It did almost start kind of progressive, where she's like, although, yes, she's getting married to save her kingdom, or not even save it, to combine her kingdoms. Like, she is choosing it, not her father for her. She's the one choosing it. She seems to have agency, but she loses it as soon as she gets kidnapped. And she doesn't call, and I think that's also what drove me nuts. Is like, okay, I get it. You can fall for someone when you first see him, but when you're getting kidnapped and you just met the guy, you're going to be calling for your father. You're not going to be calling for that dude. And she's just, Colwyn, come save me. And I was like, you don't even know him. Like, just... And she doesn't react at all to her dad dying, and clearly they had a fairly good relationship. And just, I don't know. And she can make fire from nothing, and she never does anything with it except for give it to a man who is saving her.
That's that symbolism right there.
Yes. That was them working together. That was them working together to defeat the bad guys. Like, no, how about you use the flame to, like, get the glaive out, and then he can use your glaive while you're using your flame. God. Stupid.
Yeah. Or some kind of subversion where, like, he can't wield it, and only she can, or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the widow lady being all mad that she looks all old now, and the guy's like, you should see me how I see you, and then she looks like that pretty model while we're having the whole conversation, and you're like, well, she did look very pretty, but I'm just like, you killed your son, really, out of revenge? Like, really?
It's petty jealousy.
Yeah. I don't know. I hated it.
This was not a pleasant experience rewatching this one. I can see why I would want to push this back into the far recesses of my memory, because, wow, this was, even as a young child, which it must have been when I seen this had to have been, if I watched this in its entirety, it would have to have been in the 80s, when it was probably on, like, constant rotation on television, because I'm sure it was. And yeah, not a fan. This is not one that I care to revisit. I can see one good thing about this movie. This could be one of those really fun, so bad it's good, when you're watching it with a bunch of people and you're just roasting the hell out of the movie.
Yeah, I can see that. I do love doing that.
Yes. Those used to be regular occurrences in the old Asgard Falls, or whatever that place was called. before the Avengers Tower.
Oh, Mitch's place.
Yes. The previous Mitch's place.
What? It was called Asgard Falls.
Something like that. Asgard something or other. Yeah. They had a long driveway. I think they called it the Rainbow Road. I could be misremembering, but these things for some reason jog a memory. But yes, there were regular B-movie nights where people would just get together, hang out, have fun, have food, play games, and watch bad movies, and it was a grand old time. That was like over a decade ago at this point. I think that feels like forever.
That'd be fun. We should bring that back. We'll do it as an overtime for something, either Geeks Watch or something. That would be fun. Because I absolutely adore watching really bad movies and roasting them, because it's my favorite thing. I have definitely turned into one of those people that talk during movies, unfortunately. It's gotten worse during COVID, in which I'm not in movie theaters, so it drives my parents nuts.
No, I do that in the theater. People hate me.
Oh, no. I'm not that bad, at least. The worst it ever got, which really crazy tangent, but because everybody was crapping on it so much, even though I didn't want to go see it, I did go see Batman versus Superman by myself. But some lady chose to sit really close to me, and I was like dying to not talk under my breath. Like I almost died in that seat.
You want to just start talking to random strangers about the movie? Like, yo, can you believe this?
I literally did. I almost wanted to turn around and be like, do you see this shit? Like, what? Martha? That wasn't even the worst part, though, but it was still
honestly,
bad.
that would have made it worth it. For a short period of time, this didn't last very long, but I started doing drunk movies. I went to what was the latest Predator movie, which was really bad, and I think also Batman versus Superman or Justice League, one of those two. It must have been Justice League, actually. Yeah, I went to those like shit-faced drunk, and I remember them being really fun. Still bad movies, don't get me wrong, but I enjoyed myself.
Okay, alright.
I definitely roasted the hell out of the Predator movie, because I'm like, what in the hell is going on here? Like, this is ridiculous. And the Batman one, or the Justice League, I mean, I think you have to be drunk to kind of appreciate it, because it's such a hodgepodge. Which is essentially what Krull is. This is just a hodgepodge of like every sci-fi and science fiction trope and fantasy trope, which doesn't go well together. Which leads me to my next question. If you were going to make a cocktail named Krull, what would this be?
It wouldn't be drinkable. That's what it is.
I thought about that.
Didn't you already make a cocktail? Just absence. It would just be, let's see, bottom shelf plastic bottle vodka with, let's see, pickle juice.
Whoa. Was not expecting
Which
that.
I like pickle juice, but because it's super vinegary.
I'm going to go in a similar direction, but continue.
And ginger beer, because it makes absolutely no sense.
I respect
ginger
that.
Beer, vodka, and pickle juice.
So along the same lines, yes, my version of the Krull. So these are all separate ingredients that I really, really like. But when put together, I feel will give you that same level of disorientation and like disgustedness. I would start first with fruit punch. That's one of my favorite flavors for mixed drinks. Okay. And then I would combine it with Camarena tequila, because I just like the name.
I wonder why.
Followed by Smirnoff spicy tamarind infused vodka.
Ooh, okay.
And top it off with Kraken spiced rum.
That's a good one.
And this is a full glass, mind you. This is not a shot.
It's not a shot. It's
No.
just full
So
glass.
this is basically all these different things that separately I love, and combined in certain portions I also love, but all mixed together, it's just a good way to get fucked up.
Yeah. I feel like to mine we should also add bitters somewhere because
Yeah,
this
because you can't enjoy
made me
it.
feel very bitter.
You can't make it too good. You have to throw something in there to offset it. I was thinking of doing something really disgusting like Bailey's with like the twist of lime, just to
Ugh.
like give it that extra little curdle to it. But I was like, no, I still want to make it palatable, just overwhelming to the senses because it's just got too many good things in it. And that's the problem with Krull. There's good things in it. There's just too many of them in the wrong proportions.
Yeah, okay, I guess.
Oh, I should have added
I guess the vodka shouldn't be plastic vodka. It should be the most expensive vodkas with incredibly cheap ingredients.
let me add one more ingredient to this to really seal the deal on this drink.
Uh-huh. I'm scared.
Finish it off with some Southern Comfort.
You hate that. Oh, you
That,
just,
yes,
like,
because I was looking at it, I was like, you know what? I could still enjoy that drink as messed up as it is. No, you gotta throw in that last thing to just really screw it up.
oh gosh.
Wow, that just gave me like flashbacks.
Oh yeah.
We'll have to tell
Ugh.
that story someday on one of the
That's like-
podcasts.
You just described like a grog or a college punch, basically.
It's like
a
some kind
cheap
of
frat
jungle
party
juice.
punch. Yeah, jungle juice is what it reminds me of. Grog is the military version of that you do at the ball. Only with grog, they typically put in really nasty stuff, like certain people are selected to put in ingredients, and you should always have a reason for the ingredient that you put in. And for example, one I had seen on YouTube when my dad was talking about this, because he was talking about his military ball times, a troop from Afghanistan put in sand from a boot because that's working out in the sandbox, and you can put in like the super cheap rum, or you can put in like your dirty socks and stuff like that. And the whole point of the grog is if you make a mistake, a mannerly mistake or an etiquette mistake, then you have to go take a shot of that grog. But the grog must be approved by the highest ranking member in the room too. I don't know if it's changed. This is just how my dad described it, but basically there is somebody picked to approve of the grog, so they have to drink it first to see if they approve it. And apparently my dad has had to approve grog before, and wow.
I'm sure the stories he can tell about military time.
Yeah,
is-
I think he said somebody had added kimchi because they had been to Korea. So I was like, what?
Is that like just spicy stuff? Like,
Kimchi is the fermented cabbage. So it is
okay.
spicy, but it doesn't have to be spicy, I don't think, but it's the fermented cabbage that generally goes on the side of Korean
that sounds
dishes.
kind of
It's like
gross, but not like super disgusting. Like, I'm sure that there's been some pretty heinous things put in those grog.
Oh yeah. So there you go. There's but
Oh,
I don't know if any members of the military currently have any grog stories, or if they still do grog. I have no idea, but that was back in the 90s when my dad was approving grog. So
wow.
yeah, there you go.
All right.
I think I would rather try a grog than watch this movie again.
I'm right there with you, actually. I was like, boot sand, give it here. Come on.
Give it here. Come on, we got it. It'll
I'm
sink
not
down to the bottom
Anakin.
anyway.
I don't hate sand.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything to add about this movie. It's just it's a lump of coal.
Yeah, I'm ready to move
It
on
is
with
not
my
a
life.
gemstone.
Oh yeah, that's called depression glass, by the way. That uranium-infused glass that was made around the turn of the century.
Oh, okay.
Which glows in the dark, really cool, and especially Vaseline glass is another popular term for it. It looks pretty crazy because you're like, oh, cool, this like dinnerware is glowing in the dark. That's because it's emitting like high-level isotopes that are not good for you. But
Yeah, well,
people
they
didn't
used
really
to
know.
put the radium paint on watches to make them glow in the dark, and the women that did that all got really sick because it was before we understood that radium was bad for you. Actually,
Yeah.
No, we understood that radium was bad for you, but
They just didn't care because OSHA wasn't a thing, and
yes, that's exactly. I do believe we mentioned in other podcasts and stuff that things don't change until enough people die, or get sick.
well,
and
until
injured.
it affects the bottom dollar, yeah. If
Yeah.
it didn't affect the company's like production or anything like that, we'd still be seeing it. That's why there's still a lot of interesting workplace situations. But this is not the podcast for that conversation.
No, it's not.
We'll definitely touch up on those types of things later on. No, I have nothing more to say about this movie. This was as close to a miserable experience as I've had doing any of these things, just because it was just such a baffling, head-scratching movie.
Yep. Yeah.
Asgard Acres, that's what it was called.
Asgard Acres.
Yeah, because I was out in the middle of nowhere, like the county somewhere.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah. I don't even remember how to get there. It's like before Google Maps. I don't even know how we used to find it.
Google Maps don't even like our counties, so it wouldn't
This
be
is
able to
true.
find it today anyway.
Yeah, you'll run into like a bog of like quicksand out there.
Yeah.
Just
If only it
our
had
text.
rodents of unusual sizes.
Yeah.
That's what I was waiting
yeses.
for.
I don't think they exist. See, this is what we need to do to recover. We need to quote better movies to remind us of the good times.
Yeah, I ended up today, after watching this the night before, I watched Luca finally, so I did already watch a good movie.
Oh yeah, Tenet's
Just
on
the
HBO
new-
Max. I need to watch that one.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Luca's the new Pixar movie out on Disney Plus for free.
Is that the Little Mermaid kid?
No, I mean he's a sea monster, but
Sea monster. Okay.
yeah, not the Little Mermaid, but no, very cute. Highly recommend. Do not recommend Krull.
I still need to go watch Soul.
Ooh, be careful.
Should I have a...
May give you an existential crisis like Loki does.
Dude, I have those every day. I was like... Oh, wow.
Nothing.
Nihilism? Yeah, no problem.
All right, John. If people want to ask you about
Smash
why
Brothers?
you dislike... No. Why you dislike Southern Comfort so much, where can they get at you?
Well, you can at me, or you can at Super Kami Daniel, because he was partially responsible for that story. But you can reach me on Twitter at MagicBollocks.
And if you'd like to talk to me about female representation in 80s fantasy, you can tweet me as at JMBaileyWrites. You can find archives of this podcast and other podcasts that we are in, such as Geeks Watch, out over on geekelitemedia.com. You can also find Geek Elite Media as at Geek Elite Media on Twitter and Instagram, and facebook.com/Geek Elite Media. We do also have a Patreon page, so if you got a couple extra bucks floating around, please find us on Patreon as patreon.com/Geek Elite Media. Any little bit helps. And if anything, wherever you are listening to this podcast, if you could like, rate, review, subscribe to it, that is also a huge help as well. Thank you so much for listening, and always remember to geek out.
This concludes our broadcast.